Imagine the heartbreak of a mother waking up one morning to find that her daughter, excited for a summer at camp, is now nowhere to be found. It's the kind of nightmare that no parent ever expects to face, especially when there's no sign of a struggle, no ransom note, no strange phone calls, just an empty bed where her daughter was supposed to be. This isn't a plot from a crime thriller or a fictional mystery novel. No, this is the shocking reality of a young girl named Emily, who disappeared without a trace after attending what was supposed to be a fun, life-changing summer camp experience. Her parents, the police, even the entire town were left with nothing but confusion and fear as weeks, then months, passed without a single clue. For 15 long years, the question haunted everyone involved. What happened to Emily, and why did she never return? I know what you're thinking. What happened? Where did she go? How is it possible that no one knew where she was for so long? Well, stay with me, because you're about to discover something truly mind-blowing. We're going to unravel the mystery together, piece by piece, step by step, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have answers that are as chilling as they are unexpected. Are you ready to take the journey? Keep watching, because this isn't just about a girl who went missing. It's about what we uncover 15 years later. The truth buried in the pages of a diary, forgotten by most but preserved through time. You're probably wondering what could possibly be so important about this diary. You might think, it's just an old book with scribbled notes. What could it reveal? But let me tell you, this diary holds the key to unlocking Emily's fate, and what's written in those pages is far from ordinary. In fact, it's what led to one of the most unexpected twists in a missing person case that no one could have ever predicted. You might think that after so many years, the mystery would remain unsolved, locked away in the past, a tragic story with no happy ending. But what if I told you that a single diary entry, written by a terrified girl, unsure of her future, would change everything? As we dive deeper into this story, I want you to think about something. What would you do if someone you loved simply vanished, leaving behind no clues, no answers, nothing but a void where once there was laughter and warmth? Would you give up? Would you accept the unanswered questions? Or would you search relentlessly for answers? Emily's family never gave up, and this video is a testament to the power of hope, perseverance, and the unexpected ways the truth can finally surface. But here's the thing. You won't find the answers immediately. No, we're going to take our time and work through every lead, every detail, every clue that was overlooked for so long. Together, we'll piece together the puzzle that has left so many people asking, how could something like this happen? And most importantly, what does it say about the world we live in when the smallest detail, a forgotten diary, can hold the key to solving a case that has left everyone baffled for years? You'll meet the people who were closest to Emily, her friends at the camp counselors, and the detectives who spent years working on the case. You'll hear their stories and their perspectives, and you'll begin to understand why this mystery remained unsolved for so long. And just when you think you know everything, just when the answers seem within reach, something shocking happens. A revelation so unexpected that it leaves even the most seasoned investigators speechless. You'll be left wondering, how could they have missed this? How could such an important clue have gone unnoticed for so long? I want you to imagine yourself in the shoes of Emily's mother, someone who has spent every single day since that summer wondering what happened to her daughter. For 15 years, she clung to the hope that one day, she'd find out the truth. That one day, she'd be able to hold Emily in her arms again and tell her how much she was loved, how much she was missed. And then, one fateful day, that hope is reignited. A piece of the past, a forgotten relic from Emily's time at camp, is discovered in an old box. It's the diary, a simple, unassuming object that turns out to be anything but. Little did anyone know that the words written in that diary would unravel the mystery and bring the long-lost truth to light. As we dive deeper into this case, I'll walk you through each and every discovery as we piece together what happened that fateful summer. Along the way, you'll be surprised by the twists, the turns, and the shocking truths that were buried for over a decade. You'll find yourself asking questions that will haunt you as you watch, questions that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about this case. So, stay tuned, because I promise you this: the answer to this mystery is not what you expect. And when we reach the final revelation, you'll be left speechless. But don't worry, I'll be right here with you, guiding you through each part of the journey. Together, we'll uncover the hidden truths of Emily's disappearance, and I'll ensure you don't miss a single detail along the way. But right now, just as we're on the verge of discovering the answer, there's a twist that will change everything. Something you didn't see coming. Something that will leave you hanging on the edge of your seat, eager to know more. It's coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Are you ready to see what this diary reveals? Are you prepared for the shocking truth that's been hidden for so long? Then keep watching. You're about to find out exactly what happened to Emily, and I guarantee, by the end of this video, you'll have answers you never expected. As we start to piece together the mystery of Emily's disappearance, it's important to understand who she was before that summer. A girl full of life and promise, with big dreams and an even bigger heart. Emily wasn't just any girl. She was a beacon of positivity, the type of person who lit up a room with her laugh and her infectious energy. A high school sophomore, she had a tight-knit group of friends who adored her and a family that couldn't imagine a life without her. Her parents, Michael and Claire, were the kind of people who always supported her, whether it was attending school plays or driving her to countless extracurricular activities. Emily had always been a good kid, kind, caring, and respectful. She had no history of trouble or bad behavior, and anyone who knew her would describe her as thoughtful and mature beyond her years. To all appearances, she was the perfect teenager, someone who would go on to do great things in life. So, what could have possibly gone wrong? How could a girl like Emily simply vanish into thin air, leaving behind nothing but the echo of unanswered questions? The answer, as it turned out, was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. The summer camp Emily attended was supposed to be an adventure, a chance for her to make new friends, explore the outdoors, and create memories that would last a lifetime. It was an ordinary summer camp, nestled in the woods about 2 hours outside of her hometown, far enough to feel like an escape, but close enough to be safe. When she left, her parents were excited for her, knowing this would be a chance for her to stretch her wings. Emily had always been independent, but there was no reason to think anything unusual would happen. They exchanged a few texts and phone calls in the first few days of camp, but after that, nothing. The silence grew louder with each passing day. On the last day of camp, a full week before the camp's scheduled end, Emily's disappearance was discovered. Her cabin mates were the first to realize something was wrong. When they arrived at the cabin early in the morning to pack for the journey home, Emily's bed was empty. At first, the counselors thought maybe she had gone for an early morning walk, a common thing among the campers. But when the hours passed and there was still no sign of her, panic set in. A search was launched immediately, with local authorities and volunteers scouring the surrounding area, hoping to find some trace of Emily. But all they found were dead ends. No footprints, no sign of a struggle, no clues at all. It was as if Emily had just disappeared into thin air, with no explanation. As the search stretched into days, then weeks, the theories started to pile up. Some believed she had simply run away. Maybe she was tired of her small-town life, tired of the expectations, and needed to escape. There were rumors that Emily had been hiding something, some dark secret that no one knew about, maybe a troubled relationship with one of her friends or a counselor at camp. But no one could confirm these rumors, and her family refused to believe them. They knew Emily, and they knew she would never just leave without a word. It didn't make sense. Then, as the weeks turned into months and the months into years, the case began to go cold. There were no new leads, no new sightings, and eventually, the case became one of those tragic, unsolved mysteries, something that people talked about in whispers, a painful reminder of a life that had been cut short, a girl whose bright future had been taken away. But just when everyone had almost given up hope, something happened. Something unexpected that would change everything. It began with a phone call. A phone call that Emily's parents had been waiting for, though they didn't know it would come so many years later. The call was from the local police department, from a detective who was just beginning to dig into Emily's case again, on the advice of a colleague who had recently retired. It was a long shot, one of those calls that you almost expect to be another false alarm. But it wasn't. The detective had found something that had been hidden in plain sight all this time, something that no one had bothered to look at before, a box of old camp materials from the year Emily disappeared. Among the brochures, the camping schedules, and the camp staff lists, there was a single unmarked box. It was filled with old belongings that had been left behind by campers that year, things that had somehow ended up in the lost and found and forgotten over the years. And there, in the bottom of the box, was a single, well-worn journal. Emily's journal. When the police opened the journal, they found something extraordinary, entries that revealed a side of Emily that no one had known about. A side that was filled with confusion, fear, and hints of something darker lurking beneath the surface. In the beginning, the entries seemed like typical teenage musings, the ups and downs of friendships, the excitement of camp activities, the crushes and dramas of young love. But as the days wore on, the entries began to shift. Emily wrote about feeling uncomfortable around certain people, specifically one of the camp counselors, a man named Greg. She mentioned his strange behavior, how he would often linger near her cabin after hours, how he seemed to watch her from a distance. At first, Emily dismissed these feelings, thinking it was just her imagination. But as the days went on, she grew increasingly uneasy. In one of her final entries, written just 2 days before her disappearance, Emily wrote about a conversation she overheard between Greg and another counselor, a woman named Kate. They were talking in hushed tones about something Emily couldn't hear clearly, but she sensed it was serious. And then the entry stopped. The journal ended abruptly, with no mention of her disappearance, no clues, just an unfinished sentence about how she was planning to confront Greg the next day. That was the last anyone ever heard from Emily. The discovery of the journal sent shockwaves through the investigation. Could this man, Greg, have been involved in Emily's disappearance? Was there something more to her feelings of unease? As the investigation ramped up again, the authorities began to re-interview everyone connected to the camp, the staff, the other campers, the parents, and the closer they looked at Greg, the more unsettling details started to emerge. But there was one problem. Greg had vanished as well. After Emily disappeared, he had simply disappeared from the radar. No one had seen or heard from him again, and no one could explain where he went or what happened to him. Was he the key to the mystery? Or was he just another red herring in a case full of them? The more they dug into his past, the more questions arose. It seemed like everyone had a different story to tell about him, and the deeper they looked, the more the mystery thickened. Greg's sudden disappearance raised even more questions than it answered, and it seemed like every time they thought they were getting closer to the truth, something new would emerge, shifting the entire investigation in a new direction. As the investigation grew more complicated, one thing became clear. Emily's disappearance wasn't just a case of a missing girl, it was a puzzle, with each new clue revealing more about the complex web of relationships, secrets, and lies that surrounded the camp that summer. Who was hiding the truth? And what was Emily's real story? As the investigation into Emily's disappearance seemed to pick up steam, it became clear that the deeper they dug, the more obstacles appeared, each one more frustrating and mysterious than the last. The police were determined, the family was desperate for answers, but something, or someone, seemed intent on keeping the truth buried. The first major setback came when the journal, the key to unlocking everything, disappeared. After weeks of painstaking work, the police had finally secured the journal, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they had everything they needed to crack the case wide open. But when they went to review it one morning, it was gone. The box where it had been carefully stored was still there, but the journal was missing, as if it had never existed in the first place. This disappearance was baffling. How could something like this happen in a locked evidence room? The only people who had access were a handful of investigators, but no one admitted to taking the journal. It didn't make any sense, unless someone with a lot of power and influence had intervened, someone who didn't want the truth to come out. The family was crushed. They had come so close to getting answers, but now They were left with nothing but more questions. Was it a mistake? Or had someone deliberately taken the journal to cover up the truth? They didn't know, but the police were no closer to figuring it out. As the frustration mounted, Emily's parents became more vocal in their search for answers. They held press conferences, talked to the media, and did everything they could to keep their daughter's case alive. But each time they thought they were gaining ground, something or someone would make them stumble again. An anonymous phone call came in, warning them to stop digging. The voice on the other end of the line was calm, almost dispassionate, and told them that they were getting too close to something they weren't prepared to handle. "You don't know what you're messing with," the voice said before abruptly hanging up. It was unsettling, and yet it only fueled their determination to keep going. But who was behind that call? Was it a threat, or was someone just trying to scare them into backing off? Then, just when things seemed like they couldn't get any worse, Emily's best friend from camp, a girl named Sarah, came forward with some information that didn't add up. Sarah had been one of the last people to see Emily before she disappeared, and for years, she had kept a low profile, unwilling to talk to anyone about the events leading up to that summer. She had always been close with Emily, and her silence had been the subject of much speculation over the years. But now, after all this time, Sarah wanted to speak. She agreed to meet with the investigators, but the conversation didn't go as anyone expected. Sarah revealed that, during their last night at camp, Emily had told her something so startling that Sarah hadn't been able to bring herself to talk about it until now. Emily had confided in Sarah that she was planning to confront Greg the next day, but what Sarah didn't know is why. Emily hadn't mentioned anything about Greg in the days leading up to her disappearance, at least not in any detail. There had been something unspoken, something Sarah hadn't picked up on until it was too late. The question lingered. What had Greg done to Emily? Why was she so afraid of him? But just as Sarah was about to tell the investigators everything she knew, something strange happened, something that made the entire room go cold. As she spoke, she suddenly froze. Her eyes widened, and her voice caught in her throat. It was as if she had seen something that terrified her, something so horrifying that she couldn't finish her sentence. And just like that, she stopped talking. She couldn't continue, couldn't answer any more questions. The interview ended abruptly, and Sarah was escorted out of the building, visibly shaken. What had caused her to panic like that? What was it that Sarah had been about to reveal? Was there something more to Emily's story that Sarah was hiding? The investigators were left with a growing sense of unease. But as strange as that moment was, it wasn't the only troubling sign. The camp itself, once a place full of happy memories and adventure, became a place of suspicion. No one seemed willing to talk anymore. The staff members who had once been so open about the summer events now clammed up. A few of them even quit their jobs, leaving town without giving any explanation. It seemed like the closer the investigation came to the truth, the more people disappeared or refused to cooperate. One of the camp counselors, who had worked there the summer Emily went missing, was found dead in a car accident just days after being contacted by the police for a second round of questioning. While it was ruled an accident, the timing felt too coincidental. And then there was the matter of Kate, the other counselor who had been with Greg during those strange conversations Emily overheard. Kate had been one of the few people who seemed to know anything about Emily's last days at the camp, but when the investigators tried to reach her, she was gone. No one had seen her leave, and no one could find a trace of her. It was as if she had disappeared, leaving behind only a trail of unanswered questions. With so many pieces of the puzzle missing and so many people refusing to talk, the investigation began to unravel. The more they searched for the truth, the more they were met with walls, dead ends, and strange warnings. Emily's case was slowly slipping through their fingers. And just when it seemed like they might be able to make a breakthrough, the final twist came. In a chilling turn of events, a new piece of evidence was discovered. It was a photograph, taken by one of the campers who had attended that summer, hidden among a pile of old pictures from the camp. It showed a group of campers standing in front of a cabin, but there, in the background, was something that no one had noticed before. Someone was watching them from the shadows. Someone with eyes that seemed to follow Emily, as if they were waiting for her to notice. Who was that figure in the photograph? And why had it taken so long for it to surface? The more they looked at it, the more they realized this wasn't just a photo. It was a clue, a glimpse into something much darker than they had ever imagined. But before they could trace its origins, the photo disappeared. And with it, the last hope of finding Emily seemed to vanish once again. Where did it go? Who took it? And what did it really mean? This photo, along with the sudden disappearance of key evidence, was the final straw. It seemed like someone or something was determined to keep Emily's story hidden. Was it a deliberate attempt to bury the truth, or was there something even more sinister at play? The search for Emily had become a race against time, with every lead turning into a dead end and the people who might know the truth disappearing one by one. But the question remained: who was behind it all, and what were they trying to protect? It was a mystery that was far from solved, and as the investigation continued, one thing was certain. The truth was closer than anyone thought, but it was also more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. As the investigation stumbled further into murky waters, it was clear that the stakes were higher than anyone had initially imagined. Just when it seemed like the case had reached a dead end, something unexpected happened, something that would send shockwaves through the investigation and open up a new, dangerous layer of mystery. A new clue came to light, but this time, it wasn't a piece of evidence found at the camp or even in the town. It came from someone who had been tangentially connected to Emily's story all along, but whose involvement had previously gone unnoticed. Emily's cousin Lily, who had been just a child at the time of Emily's disappearance, suddenly started receiving strange messages. They arrived in the form of cryptic text messages, too vague to immediately make sense, but unmistakably connected to the case. At first, the messages seemed harmless, just strange notes that hinted at something far bigger, some long-buried secret. "You don't want to know the truth," one message read. "It's already too late to turn back now." Another one followed shortly after. "Your cousin wasn't supposed to leave, and neither were you." Lily, confused and frightened, didn't know what to make of these eerie notes. But she knew enough to reach out for help, and when she did, the investigators began looking into her case more closely. As they dug into the messages, they found something even more troubling. The number sending them was tied to an old, abandoned phone, one that had been disconnected years ago but somehow was still active and used to communicate. The investigators couldn't understand how this was possible, but they couldn't ignore the connection. Had someone been following Lily, using her to get to the heart of the investigation? Or was someone trying to push her into uncovering the truth before she was ready? The more they tried to trace the source of the mysterious messages, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. Each attempt to reach the person behind the phone led to more dead ends. It was as the investigation deepened, the creeping unease that had begun as a quiet whisper in the back of their minds turned into a constant, gnawing sensation that couldn't be ignored. Each new piece of evidence, each cryptic message, and each unsettling discovery only intensified the sense that someone was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Lily, Emily's cousin, had been trying to carry on with her life, but the weight of the situation had become too heavy to bear. The strange messages, the car that had followed her, and now the knowledge that she was caught in the middle of something much darker than she had ever imagined made her feel like a pawn in someone else's game. But nothing prepared her for what happened next, the moment that made her realize she wasn't just investigating a missing persons case anymore. She was in real, tangible danger. It happened late one night, just after she had received the most threatening message yet. The text had come through without warning, the words cold and direct. "Stop digging or you'll end up like her." It was a stark, horrifying message that set her heart racing in a way she hadn't felt before. For the first time, Lily felt the weight of the situation on her shoulders, a chill running down her spine as she realized someone dangerous, was warning her to stay away from the truth. She had no intention of backing down, but the fear was there, undeniable. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone was out there, lurking in the shadows. The next day, as Lily went about her usual routine, she couldn't help but glance over her shoulder every few minutes, scanning her surroundings for any signs of someone following her. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At least, not until she arrived home. Her front door, which had been securely locked when she left earlier that morning, was now slightly ajar. It wasn't open wide, just enough to make her pause and wonder if she had forgotten to lock it properly. But as she stepped inside, the air in the house felt wrong. It was heavier, as if something had shifted in the space she thought she knew so well. Her eyes darted around the rooms, looking for any sign of disturbance. Nothing seemed out of place, except for the faint smell of something burnt, a scent that seemed to linger in the air. She checked each room one by one, but there was no immediate sign that anyone had been inside. Everything was in its place, except for her laptop. It was gone. Lily's stomach sank. She had left it on her desk that morning, carefully stored in its case, but now it was nowhere to be found. Panic surged through her chest as she realized that someone had been in her home. Someone had taken it. Her first instinct was to call the police, but something held her back. What if they already knew? What if this wasn't just a random break-in? She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears, the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her, making it harder to think clearly. Had they taken the laptop to cover their tracks? Was the truth hidden in the files she had gathered? In that moment, she realized just how deep the web of lies had become. Whoever was behind this was not going to let her uncover the truth so easily. The thought of going to the authorities seemed like a distant, pointless option. Whoever had taken the laptop had made it clear they knew exactly how to cover their tracks, how to leave no evidence behind. Even if she did go to the police, would they believe her? Or was she already too far in, already marked as someone who knew too much? The feeling of being trapped, of being watched from every angle, grew overwhelming. That night, Lily tried to sleep, but the paranoia was too much. Every sound seemed louder than usual. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump. Every car that passed by her window felt like a threat. She tossed and turned, unable to escape the growing dread that clung to her like a second skin. Just as she began to drift off, her phone buzzed again. A new message. "I told you to stop. Now it's too late. You're next." The words sent a shock of cold fear straight to her bones. This wasn't just some random warning. This was personal. She was no longer just a distant observer of a mystery. She was the next target. And someone, somewhere, was going to make sure she didn't uncover the truth. Lily's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Who was doing this? Who had the power to pull all the strings, to manipulate her life like this? Could it be someone she knew? Someone close to her? Someone who had been playing a game all along, and now that she was getting too close to the truth, they were coming for her? The thought made her stomach churn. Was it her father, who had been so protective of her during the investigation? Was he involved in some way? Or was it someone else? Someone from Emily's past? Someone with a hidden agenda? The questions piled up faster than she could answer them, each one more unsettling than the last. She knew one thing for sure, though. Whoever was behind this would stop at nothing to keep her from uncovering the truth. But what was the truth? And why had Emily's disappearance, and now her own life, become so entangled in this twisted web? Just as the weight of the situation pressed down on her, a sudden noise broke the silence. A knock at the door. Lily froze, every muscle in her body tensing. She wasn't expecting anyone. It could be the person who had been following her, the person who had sent the threats, the person who had already taken too much from her. She slowly walked toward the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. What awaited her on the other side? She wasn't sure she was ready to find out. But as the door creaked open, the face that greeted her wasn't the one she had expected. Instead, it was someone she had hoped to never see again. It was someone from her past, someone with their own dark secrets, someone who might hold the key to unlocking everything. But before she could react, the figure stepped forward, whispering a single word that would change everything. "It's time." The door slowly creaked open, and there, standing in the dim light of the hallway, was a figure that Lily never expected to see again. It was Aunt Clara, Emily's mother. The one person who had always seemed to stay in the background during the investigation, offering only faint, cryptic responses when asked about her daughter's disappearance. She was supposed to be a figure of comfort, someone with the same pain, the same grief, But now, seeing her standing there, Lily's pulse spiked with unease. Clara's face was pale, her expression unreadable, as she stepped into the house, closing the door behind her without a word. There was something about her presence, something off. She was always the quiet, reserved type, but now she seemed almost different. "Lily, we need to talk," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. But there was an edge to it that made Lily's blood run cold. Clara wasn't the type to come around unannounced, especially not after all these years. Lily could feel her heart pounding in her chest, every instinct telling her something was wrong. "What's going on, Aunt Clara?" Lily asked, trying to steady her breathing. "What are you doing here?" Clara hesitated for a moment, glancing around the room as if making sure they were alone, before she spoke again, her words tumbling out in a hurried, shaky tone. "I've been watching you, Lily. Watching everything you've been doing. Everything you've been uncovering. And I didn't want to tell you this, but there's no way around it anymore. You're in danger." Lily's mind was reeling. Was this some sort of twisted warning? A threat veiled in concern? But it didn't stop there. Clara stepped closer, and with a shaking hand, pulled out a small, worn envelope from her bag, handing it to Lily with an unsettling urgency. "You need to read this," she said, her voice trembling. "It's from Emily. She wrote it, before everything happened." Lily's eyes widened as she took the envelope, her hands trembling. She recognized the handwriting immediately, the familiar looped letters that had once filled the pages of Emily's diary. But this was different. It wasn't just a random entry. It was a letter, written with clear intent, as if Emily had known something was about to happen, something they couldn't have predicted. She carefully opened the envelope, her heart pounding in anticipation. But as she read the letter, everything she thought she knew, everything she had been chasing, began to unravel. "Lily, I'm sorry," the letter began. "I never wanted you to find this, but I know you will. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I need you to know the truth. Everything you've been told, everything you've been led to believe about my disappearance, it's all a lie. It wasn't just a random act. It wasn't an accident. Someone close to me did this, someone I trusted. And it's someone you still know." The words hit Lily like a punch to the gut. Someone close to Emily, someone she trusted. Could it be her own family? Could it be Aunt Clara herself? The doubts surged in her mind as she lifted her eyes to meet Clara's gaze. Clara's face was hard to read, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something dark, that made Lily's skin crawl. "What is this, Clara?" Lily demanded, her voice shaking, the letter still in her hands. "What's going on? What did Emily mean by this?" Clara took a deep breath, her expression faltering for a brief moment before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know the whole story, Lily. None of us do." There was a long pause before she continued, her words heavy with regret. "Emily didn't just disappear. She was taken. But not for the reasons you think. And the person who did this, they didn't just take her to hurt her. They took her because they needed something. They needed her to do something. And I was the one who helped them." Lily stared at her aunt in disbelief. The woman who had always been there, who had seemed so lost in her own grief, was now confessing to being involved in something far darker than Lily could have imagined. "You're lying," Lily spat, feeling her world tilt beneath her. "You're saying you helped someone take Emily? You're saying you knew what was going on?" Clara's face hardened, her voice now cold and detached. "I didn't have a choice, Lily. You don't understand. I couldn't let them hurt her, not like this. But I had to let it happen, to protect the rest of us. Emily, she knew too much. She was tangled in something much bigger than we realized." Lily's mind was spinning. She couldn't grasp the magnitude of what Clara was saying. It was like a veil had been pulled away, revealing a terrifying, intricate truth that no one could have predicted. "You think you're in control of this, Lily," Clara continued, her voice taking on an eerie, unsettling calmness. "But you're not. They've been watching you, too. The same way they watched Emily. You're not just digging up old secrets. You're digging up something dangerous. And now you're marked. Just like she was." Clara's words hung in the air, thick with menace, leaving Lily breathless and paralyzed with fear. She wanted to scream, to lash out, but she couldn't. The truth was unfolding before her, and it was worse than anything she had imagined. She had been chasing a ghost, following breadcrumbs that had all been planted to lead her down a dark and twisted path. Everything, her investigation, her every move, had been manipulated. But by who?
And why?
Just as the full weight of the situation hit her, the front door slammed open, startling them both. Lily spun around, heart racing, as a shadowy figure stepped into the room. Her blood ran cold as the familiar face of Detective Graves emerged from the darkness, a twisted grin playing at the corners of his lips. "I see you've been having a little family reunion," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But it's too late now. You're both in this together." The ground beneath Lily's feet seemed to disappear as the true scope of the web she had become entangled in became clear. There was no escaping it now. The twists, the betrayals, the lies. They had all led her to this moment. And the real story? It was just beginning. Lily's breath caught in her throat as Detective Graves stepped further into the living room, his boots clicking ominously against the hardwood floor. Aunt Clara shrank back toward the wall like a ghost trying to vanish into the shadows, her expression a twisted mix of guilt and fear. Graves wasn't just some cop who'd been on the original case. He was involved, embedded in this nightmare like rot beneath the floorboards. Lily's mind raced, her thoughts colliding as the reality of the situation came crashing down like a tidal wave. Everything she had uncovered, every note in Emily's diary, every voice message, every flicker of intuition, it had all pointed her toward the truth, but now she stood on the edge of it, and it looked nothing like she expected. Graves crossed his arms slowly, watching her with the kind of smug calm that made her skin crawl. "Here's the thing, Lily," he said smoothly, as if reading her unraveling mind. "You can either leave this alone right now, walk away and pretend you never dug into it, or you can keep pushing and I promise you won't like where that road leads. Your choice." There was no pretense in his tone. This wasn't some subtle warning. It was a threat. A declaration. She had poked the wrong hornet's nest, and now the swarm was circling. Lily turned to Clara, hoping for some hint, some signal that this wasn't what it looked like, but her aunt's silence confirmed it all. Clara wouldn't meet her eyes. She just stared at the floor, lips trembling, hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles turned white. Lily's voice trembled when she finally spoke. "How could you let this happen to Emily? How could you choose silence over your own daughter?" Her question wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about every person who had turned away, every adult who had buried the truth to save themselves. Clara looked up slowly, her eyes rimmed red, her expression hollow. "Because I was afraid," she whispered. "They said they'd kill her if I told anyone. They made me believe I could keep her alive if I just stayed quiet." "You believed them?" Lily shot back, emotion cracking her voice. "You believed him?" She pointed to Graves, her hands shaking. "You believed a man who helped orchestrate a child's abduction?" Graves let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head like she was some naive girl who didn't understand how the world worked. "You're thinking too small, Lily. This isn't just about Emily. This goes deeper than anything you're ready for. You think you've got it all figured out, but you don't even know who you're really dealing with." Her heart pounded harder. The fear inside her was no longer some vague chill. It was full-bodied, tangible, coiled in her chest like a snake ready to strike. And yet, somehow, it wasn't enough to make her stop. She had come too far, lost too much, and Emily deserved better than being buried in silence. Still, the reality of what Graves was offering loomed large. Walk away and maybe survive, or keep digging and risk everything, her job, her safety, her family, even her life. The weight of that decision pressed down on her like an avalanche. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but instead, she asked the one question no one else had dared to say out loud. "Is she still alive?" Clara choked back a sob. Graves didn't flinch. "That depends," he said quietly. "On you." The room tilted as Lily felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't a clue. It was a trap, and she had walked right into it. Graves was playing her, using her desperation to his advantage. If Emily was alive, then any wrong step could seal her fate forever. But doing nothing wasn't an option either. Either way, Lily was cornered, and that's exactly where they wanted her. Just then, Lily's phone buzzed violently in her pocket, jerking her out of the tense standoff. She fumbled to pull it out, and the second she saw the screen, her stomach dropped. It was a text. An unknown number. "We know what you found. Leave now or end up like her." Her hands turned ice cold. Clara leaned forward, eyes wide as she caught a glimpse of the screen. "They're watching you, Lily," she whispered. "They've been watching all of us." But Lily had already begun to back away toward the front door, her mind spinning out. Graves didn't stop her. He didn't have to. The message was clear. She wasn't just facing a moral choice now. She was fighting for her life, and possibly for Emily's. The conflict had escalated from whispers and old letters to direct threats and real, present danger. And she still didn't know who she could trust. Someone close to her had betrayed her. Clara? Graves? Someone else entirely? Lily didn't have answers. All she had were pieces of a puzzle that kept shifting every time she thought she was close. She ran out into the night air, heart pounding, phone clenched tight in her hand. The street was empty, but the feeling of being watched lingered like smoke. As she started the car and pulled away from a house, headlights flicked on in a vehicle parked just down the block. They followed. Lily's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned bone white, her eyes flickering between the rearview mirror and the shadowed road ahead. That car hadn't stopped following her for 3 straight miles, weaving through turns, staying just close enough to be seen, just far enough to avoid confrontation. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a jackhammer, but her thoughts were sharper than ever now. This wasn't about paranoia anymore. This was real. They were watching her, hunting her, trying to scare her into silence, and it was working. But not in the way they expected. It didn't make her back down. It made her furious. The text still burned in her mind. "We know what you found." That meant they'd been tracking her progress. Every page she read in Emily's diary, every call she made, every person she visited. And if that was true, if they'd been following her that closely, then someone she'd trusted was feeding them information. That realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She replayed every moment, every interaction, and something about Matt's voice, her cousin, her childhood best friend, suddenly rang hollow. He was the one who suggested she look through Clara's old storage. He was the one who kept encouraging her to stop by the police station just to ask questions, subtly pushing her into danger. And worst of all, he was the only one who knew she had scanned every page of Emily's diary into a digital folder stored in the cloud. She swerved into the empty parking lot of an old gas station, tires screeching, heart racing, and yanked her phone from the console. Her fingers flew across the screen as she opened the cloud folder, and just like that, her stomach plummeted. It was empty. Every file. Gone. Someone had wiped it clean. Her breathing grew ragged. There was no time to think. She punched in Matt's number, heart screaming. He answered on the second ring, casual as ever. "Hey, you okay?" "I was just about to." "Don't," she snapped, her voice a tremble of fury. "Don't lie to me. You said no one else had access." "I trusted you, Matt." There was a pause too long. Then he sighed, not guilty, but tired. "Lily, you don't get it. You're dealing with people who don't just cover things up. They erase people. I was trying to protect you. I thought if I kept them updated, they'd leave you alone. I didn't think you'd push this far." Her world tilted. She wanted to scream, cry, drive into the woods and disappear. But instead, she clenched her jaw and whispered, "You helped them." "I kept you alive," he hissed. "You don't know how deep this goes. Graves is just a pawn. You think this started with Emily? There are dozens of kids, Lily. Missing from camps, group homes, after-school programs, all swept under the rug. It's a network. Law enforcement, politicians, judges. They cover for each other, bury evidence, silence families. Emily's just the one that almost slipped through the cracks." Her vision blurred. "Why her?" "Because she figured it out," he said. "She knew who was taking them. She wrote it down. And you reading that diary, It's like you woke the monster back up. Her blood ran cold. Then where's she, Matt? His voice cracked for the first time. I don't know. I swear to God, I don't. They moved her. Years ago. After the first investigation. I thought she was dead. But if she's alive, if they're still watching, it means she's still a threat to them. And now, so are you. The line went dead. She sat there, gasping, the car silent, but her mind roaring. A conspiracy. A ring of abductions spanning years, hidden under fake reports, false leads, and people like Matt who looked the other way or quietly assisted. She wasn't just chasing the truth anymore. She was pulling at a thread that could unravel the entire system. And that meant she wasn't safe anywhere. She had no diary files. No more allies. And the people behind this were powerful, connected, and willing to kill. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, different number. One line. Meet me where it started. Alone. No name. No timestamp. Just a threat disguised as an invitation. Lily didn't need to guess where. She already knew. Camp Clearwind. Where Emily vanished. Where everything began. And now, where it might finally end, or where Lily would vanish next. Lily's boots crunched across the gravel-strewn path leading toward the long-abandoned Camp Clearwind Lodge, her flashlight beams slicing through the mist like a blade. The night was so quiet it hummed, the way silence sometimes does when it's waiting for something. Every step forward felt heavier than the last, as if the forest itself wanted her to turn back. The lodge was a hulking skeleton now, its wooden siding gray and brittle, the windows boarded up like someone had tried to erase it from memory. But memories clung to this place like ghosts. Lily could almost hear the echoes of laughter, the splash of the lake, the screech of sneakers on cracked basketball courts, until it all twisted into silence one summer, 15 years ago, when Emily never came home. And now, after everything, after the diary, the betrayal, the erasure of evidence, the creeping realization that she was just one step ahead of people who had spent years perfecting how to stay in the shadows, this was where it all would end. One way or another. The lodge door creaked open before she even touched it. Someone was already inside. Lily stepped through slowly, heart hammering, flashlight sweeping across broken furniture and shattered memories. Then, a voice, smooth, cold, and far too familiar, floated out of the darkness. You were supposed to let this go. Her light snapped toward the corner of the room, revealing Sheriff Graves sitting calmly on a rusted chair, pistol resting on his thigh, like he was just waiting for a late appointment. You're tenacious. I'll give you that, he said, voice low and sharp. Emily had that too. It's probably what got her into trouble. She asked too many questions.
Saw too much.
You, on the other hand, you were warned. Lily didn't flinch. You're behind all of it. The kids. The cover-ups. The threats. You led every investigation into the same dead ends. Graves smiled, not denying a thing. I didn't lead. I followed orders. We all did. This camp? It was never about kayaking or SMORAs.
It was a pipeline. A recruitment zone.
Kids no one would miss. Orphans, foster kids, runaways. Easy to disappear, easy to repackage into something useful. Emily found the files. She took photos, tried to mail them out. We caught it just in time. Lily's stomach twisted. So, you killed her? Graves' grin faltered.
No.
That was the deal. We don't kill kids. We relocate, re-educate, make them assets. Emily was given a choice, and she refused it. So, we made another choice for her. And then came the voice that shattered the world. No, you didn't. From behind a rotted beam stepped a figure Lily hadn't seen in over a decade. Older now, thinner, scarred but unmistakably familiar, Emily. Her face was pale but fierce, like someone who had clawed their way out of hell and memorized every step. You tried to break me, and you failed. Lily's breath caught. Her knees almost buckled. Emily was alive. The campfire stories, the photos in the diary, the sleepless nights staring at the ceiling wondering why she never came home. It was all right here. But before Lily could speak, Graves lunged, raising the pistol in a blur. The shot rang out like thunder, deafening and final, but not from his weapon. A second figure emerged behind him, and he collapsed mid-turn, blood seeping into the dusty floorboards. It was Matt, holding a smoking gun. His face was pale, haunted, but he met Lily's gaze and whispered, "You were right. I couldn't keep protecting them." Emily rushed to Lily, and the two girls embraced, 15 years of pain and loss collapsing into one trembling moment of truth. But even then, the mystery refused to rest. "They're still out there," Emily said, pulling away. Graves was just the gatekeeper. The people funding this, the ones pulling the strings, they'll know he's gone. They'll come looking. This isn't the end. Lily nodded slowly, heart torn between the miracle of having her best friend back and the dread of what that truly meant. "Then we expose all of it. Names, documents, everything you've kept hidden." Emily opened her backpack and pulled out a metal box, battered but locked tight. "I never stopped collecting evidence. And now, I have enough to burn it all down." But just as hope flickered to life, the floor beneath them groaned violently. Lily turned, flashlight bouncing. In the corner, where Graves had fallen, his phone buzzed. On the screen, a live feed began to play. A shadowy figure stood in front of a control panel surrounded by surveillance screens showing Camp Clearwind, Lily's house, Emily's old foster home. Then came a distorted voice, calm and chilling. "Congratulations. But you were never the only one watching. We let her find you. Now we know where you are." The screen went black, the lights in the lodge cut out. And outside, engines roared to life in the woods. What felt like the end had only been the bait. The real game had just begun. The sun rose over Camp Clearwind like it had done every morning for decades, brushing the treetops in gold and filtering through the broken rafters of the old lodge, now burned to the ground. Charred wood, twisted metal, and the scent of smoke clung to the damp air, the final remnants of a place that had concealed horrors for far too long. In the days that followed the explosion, triggered by a silent alarm tripped during Emily's escape, the FBI descended on the area after a tip made through a secure channel containing everything Emily had compiled over the years. Documents, names, locations, encrypted emails, financial records. It was all there, undeniable and damning. Lily had driven straight to a federal field office with the evidence after Emily vanished again into the night, disappearing as quickly as she had returned. She had made Lily promise, "Tell the story, spread the truth, but don't come looking for her." She couldn't risk being caught again. She had survived once. She might not be so lucky a second time. The arrests came quietly at first, one by one. An influential judge in Texas, a sitting congressman from Georgia, a retired law enforcement chief in Colorado, each name more shocking than the last. They were all part of a sprawling child trafficking network that had operated under the illusion of mentorship programs, summer camps, and youth rehabilitation facilities. Graves was just a foot soldier, a gatekeeper. The real architects had been hiding in boardrooms and courtrooms, collecting power, while the system buried their sins under bureaucracy and fear. The country watched in disbelief as the scandal broke across every major platform. YouTube live streams exploded with reaction videos, TikTokers dissected every conspiracy theory, and cable news ran endless segments titled Camp Conspiracy, the system that hid the children. But for Lily, justice didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a slow, aching release, like breathing for the first time after being underwater too long. She moved back into her mother's house outside Asheville, taking time away from the noise, the interviews, the chaos of national headlines. She kept a copy of Emily's original letter in her nightstand, stained and folded from being opened too many times, a quiet reminder that survival often looks like silence, and healing doesn't always come with closure. Some nights, she'd sit on the porch and stare out at the tree line, wondering if Emily was still out there. Was she safe? Did she find a place where she could just be a person again, not a case, not a witness, not a ghost? There were no answers, but sometimes not knowing was the only piece she could hold on to. The hardest part, though, wasn't facing the past. It was living in the present knowing how many others hadn't been found. For every Emily, there were dozens of others whose names never made headlines, whose faces never appeared on missing posters. The network had gone on for so long because it counted on silence, on fear, on the simple fact that no one ever looks too hard when the kids who vanish aren't from the right zip code. Lily couldn't forget that.
She didn't want to.
So, she turned her pain into purpose. She launched a digital archive, uploading every piece of evidence Emily had left behind, crowdsourcing cold cases, and connecting families who thought no one was listening. The site went viral almost overnight, and suddenly, she wasn't just a survivor of a nightmare. She was a lifeline for others still living in one. She told Emily's story on podcasts, spoke at panels about corruption, and quietly helped other victims come forward. But she never claimed to be the hero. She always made one thing clear. The hero was the girl who kept a diary when no one believed her, the girl who disappeared and came back not to be rescued, but to blow the entire system wide open. Emily had been the match. Lily was just carrying the flame. Still, the mystery never fully dissolved. A year after the takedown, Lily received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph, faded, worn, of two girls sitting by a lake, arms slung over each other's shoulders, smiling like they had no idea what was coming. On the back, a single line was scrawled in Emily's handwriting. "It's not over, but we're not alone anymore." That night, Lily cried harder than she had since the day the lodge burned. Not because of fear or even grief, but because that tiny sliver of connection, that spark, reminded her that sometimes the truth doesn't heal all wounds, but it does light the path forward. And so the story ended, not with neat resolutions or movie-perfect justice, but with a promise that the truth, once spoken aloud, can't be buried again. That even in a world where powerful people hide in plain sight, there will always be someone like Emily, scribbling the truth into a journal, trusting that someday someone would read it and refuse to look away.